Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Big Blue, and we're back, and we're here with the same video that we did last time, the Jubilee video of Spy on My Kids, strict versus free range parents. We last left off with a whole bunch of good prompts, interesting prompts. I could not keep my mouth shut for nothing, but because I'm so passionate about kids and seeing what other people have to say about their kids. Very interesting point of views, some stuff that I considered or already considered, some stuff that I didn't. I hope you guys had commented in that video, and I hope that you guys are going to continue to comment in this video. Let's go ahead and get right back into this. This is the second part. Let's do it. Yo, what's going on, everybody? The time is nigh. We're getting so much closer to getting to 1,000 subs, and as promised, we're going to be doing a giveaway. 2 people are going to get a chance to win $25 gift cards to Amazon. All you have to do is just hit that like button, press that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed, go down to the description where you're going to find the link to enter for the giveaway. And once I hit 1,000 subs, I'm going to go ahead and do a live. I'll let you guys know ahead of time. We're going to do this, and as I mentioned before, the more that the channel grows, the more that these giveaways are just going to increase. So y'all stick around and y'all go ahead and watch these videos. Let's get this thing up. Let's go ahead and get back to the video.
Will the agreeers please step forward?
So this one is, I spank my kids. Now, I just want to say really quickly, I'm sorry I had to stop. Define spank. I don't think I'll need to be at a point where I need to take out my belt like I used to. Okay. So quick side story, I used to be what I considered, and a lot of people considered, a disciplinarian. Why is that? Because my father disciplined the heck out of me and suspecting me to act certain ways and understand certain things and, not misbehave. So when it came to my little cousin, sorry, little Kuzos, I did the same thing. Am I going to be the same way with my kids? No, because I realized some of the flaws in spanking, and I understand that overly spanking is not okay. There definitely has to be some type of discipline, and it has to be organized. I will not spank my kid. There has to be a level of understanding and awareness. Like the 4-year-old, I don't have to spank him, but he has an understanding that if I have to tell you something more than 3 times, then I'm going to get real upset and we're going to have issues. My daughter is about to turn 2 years old, so she really doesn't get the idea. But anytime she does something that I don't like, I rectify it really quick so that as she gets older, she'll understand that, oh, if I do this and daddy says something, I probably shouldn't do it. But like I said before, she's headstrong, has so many boy tendencies that I feel like she's not going to listen anyway. I'm honestly terrified of her. But we'll see how that goes. But anyways, as far as spanking goes, there's levels to that. I think you can raise kids without spanking, but I also feel like they need to really understand, if this is a no, this is a no. And if you're not going to get it, you're going to get the hands. It's as simple as that. I want there to be a relationship with my kids, and there's a relationship. But you also need to realize that I'm also not your friend. I'm more your parent who's supposed to guide you in this world until you become an adult and do your own thing. So I have to discipline you as such. So let's keep going.
I can say,
I knew she
when my
wouldn't.
kids were younger, I came from a household where, you didn't ask questions. My dad, wait till your dad gets home. And I would say when my kids were younger, I'm 57 now and I have kids in their mid-20s. And when they were younger, I did spank them. It wasn't a thing of I wouldn't say abuse, but it was a thing of spanking, don't touch that pot, maybe smack a little bit on the hand or something like that. Because I feel like when they're younger, they have to kind of fear you a little more than what they're going to get into. Right. As they got older, I used my words more so than, spanking.
There was always kind of an age where the spanking stopped. But early on, that's kind of like that area of, yo, you need to get it together or else I'm going to get you. So that when you do get older and I tell you something and I give you that look, you need to understand that you need to stop what you're doing ASAP. It's kind of that remembrance. It may be a little bit of mind manipulation and trauma, possibly, but honestly, I don't think, like he said, as long as it's not an abusive matter, like let's say if you did something by accident, then no, you shouldn't be spanking the kids. If the kid did something by accident, you shouldn't be spanking them, and you should spank them out of frustration and anger as well. It always needs to be discipline. And it always needs to be justified by the action. And the child also needs to know what that action is before you spank them. Because if you just spank them and not really giving details, what the action that they did that isn't right, and then not explain why it's not right, then they're gonna have a hard time really navigating what they should and shouldn't do. I don't want to say have a hard time in navigating, but they may have a hard time trying to come up with better resolutions. All right, I'm gonna try and stopping as much as I can.
I think that's absolutely normal because we have to establish safety first, and then as they grow, you're able to communicate more. And I think that's exactly how we've raised our kids. There's a little bit of spanking that moved to like.
And I guess it really just sorry guys, it really just depends on your definition of spanking. We didn't get spanked. We got battles. We got beat. We got beat. I wouldn't really say spanking. Spanking to me is like a tap on the hand or like a tap on the butt or something like that. We got batons, yo, and those were serious. But I mean, in America, it's a little different. I don't know what the range is for spanking. So
The quick adjustments of a hand slap or the sassy little like flick, like, oh, you can't say that, like that's not kind, or that not.
My
something,
mom was the pinch.
Yeah, pinch. Something. Those little things, right? Those fast moving, like Yeah. But then as they get bigger, you have the conversations because it's not a life or death situation. It's a like. We can all calm down and have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think so much of this conversation is about fundamentally child development, right? A kid is never the same from the time they're 2 years old to the time they're 10 years old to the time they're 18. And there are different strategies that you're going to implement in parenting at different ages.
Absolutely.
So it just makes sense.
For me, it seems like it stopped for all three of my kids. I have a baby now that's 13 months old that hasn't been spanked. But I've stopped about 5 because the spanking is intentional and it's for a very specific consequence, like this articulated. So it's not just for anything that they do wrong. It's like this is what capital punishment is in our home.
I agree with that.
And so they don't break those rules anymore. Like
What are some examples?
So the capital punishment in our home is if they are disrespectful to me or their mother.
Right.
And anything else is another consequence. This is how I've done it. But that is articulated. They know it. When they get spanked, it's not emotional. I'm not mad at them. I sit down and explain, you know why you're getting spanked? I do. You know I don't want to do this. I hate this, but this is the consequence.
Yeah. What's funny though is with the disrespect, we used what we called sassy sauce, which is just apple cider vinegar. And so instead of spanking, and I have 2 older boys and a younger daughter, so my boys were like, I don't want sassy sauce. And I was like, then you need to.
Isn't that a form of abuse to some extent? I mean, I don't know. That's funny. Apple cider, bro.
Apologize for how you're treating me and how you're speaking. So a little sassy sauce goes a long way.
Let's bring in our disagreeers.
Oh, there's 2 of them.
You want to start us off?
Well, I was just wondering how many of you were spanked as kids?
All of them.
Okay. So I was never spanked. I was threatened, and my mom would I remember she would come up to my room with like a metal spatula and like put it on my dresser when I was supposed to be in bed and say like, if I have to come up again, I'm going to use it. Never hit me. To me, I was just taught it was wrong to hit people, anyone. Never mind like someone that you're supposed to love the most, you know. So I, like the thought of hitting a child to me makes me like sick.
Lack of discipline.
Can I ask you, if your mom was like putting things on the table saying, don't make me use it, but you never saw her use it, as you got older, did you ever look at it, be like, she's not going to do it? And then you would still do things?
Maybe.
I think that kind of connects with what everybody has mentioned thus far. Like you mentioned child development, you mentioned kind of how you grew up. How I grew up, I got spanked like 5 times because I got it. But my sister, people in my family, it was every day. They're the ones, as you know, they've reached adulthood, who are the most problematic ones. So I understood at that time, I'm like, oh, this is not the way to administer the appropriate correction and or the discipline, because I could see you guys and you got it like from 0 to 50 and like nothing has been beneficial for you. So it's just like how I parent my children, but children are different. So not like you're mentioning that suffice for you, like you saw it and you're like, okay, but some kids are like, run it, let's go. Like I'm gonna challenge that spoon to the very end of it. So then you have to build relationship. And relationship allows you to know how to have conversation, how to present the thing to the child. So that's the way I consider the parenting with spanking. As a teacher, we have to navigate how to have that expectation fulfilled, and we can't do that. So then it helps me as a parent be like, well, how do I develop my parenting skills, considering I'm a teacher?
It wasn't that long ago where spanking was common in the classroom, not just with parents. Is anybody here in support of it extending beyond just the parental role?
So I know for a fact that Definitely not in the classroom, because I mean, I never has seen that. I know they did that in Haiti, which is, I mean, that's Haiti. That's just how they do things. But definitely not over here in America. Well, especially where I grew up in New Jersey, there was no, maybe in the Catholic schools, but not in the public schools. But I did grow up in a time period where your relatives were able to spank you, or at least not too much. And honestly, now that I think about it, I don't even think my parents even knew that that my relatives spanked me. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's that trust with the parents and the relatives that, okay, if you did it with good purpose. They kind of trust the adults before they trust the child. Because if that was the case, then they wouldn't have the child around that adult. You know what I mean? So it's one thing if, like, let's say for situations of not theoretical, just like a general situation where you have a woman who has a kid, but she doesn't like grandma, and she brings grandma to the house. If grandma's spanking the kid, then of course she's not going to trust grandma because she already doesn't like grandma. You know what I'm saying? But if I trust grandma, and if I'm truly involved in my kids and know their tendencies, if grandma says that she had to spank my child, and they told me what happened, if it seems like something that my child would do over 60% of the time, then I'm going to say, okay, yeah, thank you for correcting them for that. Because it's kind of weird when it comes to that term of raising a child require it takes a village. I know a lot of you have heard that term before, but when it comes to the discipline, if that's the case, I should be able to discipline your kid. Am I going to sit here and like smack your kid up like I would with mine? No, but I am going to tell your kid, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. Or if you're doing something, like, especially when they're younger, like, hey, don't touch that. Hey, get away from that. Hey, stay over here type stuff. Especially if you're in my house. If you're in my house and you're not following my rules, you can just get out. When it comes to spanking, again, I don't think it's necessary anymore. That's just the go-to for Haitians, especially back in the day. I don't think that's the case anymore. We have much lighter means of discipline that can be the same, that can have the same effect, which is good. But I think that's very important to, if we're going to be a village and raise these kids, then we also need to be able to discipline the kid, of course, in the matter that the parent would prefer. But at the same time, it can't be like, oh, I can't say nothing to your kid. Your kid's just as greatest thing. Nah, bro, we can't do that, because now I'm letting your kid do whatever they want. And that's going to lead to previous topic that they had in the other video that I don't want to bring up. All right, let's go ahead.
I've got an actually interesting story. So my old man was in the military. I grew up all over the place. And my freshman year of high school, I was in Alabama. We had gotten in trouble, me and my buddies, for our substitute teacher. And the next day he came in, he had a list of names that had been bad in class, and I was on that list with a few of my Southern buddies. And so he said, you guys got two options. I can call your parents, or you can go down with me to the principal's office and get paddled. I didn't want to be the kid that was like, no, call my parents. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a paddle too. And he took us down to the principal's office. He was a big corn-fed boy with his own custom-made paddle, and he gave us two hard-ass whoops on our ass in front of the principal. And I got us.
Which you for sure cannot do nowadays.
Say it was makes for a great story, but I never acted up for a substitute ever again.
Did they do that to the females too, or just the?
I never saw anybody else in the school get paddled.
I remember specifically, it was, I don't know how young, but the teacher made me put my hands out like that, and took a ruler
and slap. Yeah.
And I remember thinking in my head, I don't even think I told my parents, because I thought I would get in trouble for getting in trouble. But I remember feeling so disrespected, and I didn't feel that with my parents. Like, I knew when I did something, like, and my dad said, like I said, I'm gonna spank you, or my mom might have like gave a slap or something. I was doing something. But for this teacher, someone else to do that to me,
well,
I remember
felt like
thinking,
you were ashamed, right?
Yeah, I felt like.
Was it public, like in front of the
and I couldn't do anything, and I felt like, how dare you?
Gentle parenting leads to.
There's an interesting term for this. I think there's a misconception with what gentle parenting is, but gentle parenting isn't exactly what people think it is. I think it's been misunderstood what gentle parenting is. So essentially what I do with my kids is considered gentle parenting. But a lot of people consider gentle parenting to be the case where they're not involved with the kid at all. They just let the kid do whatever they want to do. There's no structure, there's no beating, there's no discipline and stuff like that. That's not gentle parenting. It's gentle parenting is kind of like in the middle where there's discipline, there's structure, there's only like some physical reprehending if necessary, but at the same time, we're still being open with everything that's going on. Whereas to on the other side, where they just let them do whatever they want, but then backtracking to the disciplinary side, the strict side, where everything is like nitpicked, which is a lot of houses in the past. But let's see what they mean. And again, I forget what the term is, but let's go.
To weak kids, will the agreeers please step forward?
Ooh, okay. Leads to weak kid. Oh, again, I can't really answer this because it just depends on what you're doing in the gentle parenting. So like with Eden, I don't coddle him. Do I make sure I give him hugs and I tell him that I love him? Yes, I do that. But when he's doing something, I don't just do it for him. I make sure that I don't just do it for him. When he's trying to learn, I make sure that he's able to try to figure it out himself. And if he doesn't figure it out, then I'll guide him along the way. If he's doing something that he's not supposed to be doing, I'll make sure I correct him quick. There's ways that you parent that doesn't require you having to spank them every second, especially if they don't know something or they, get something wrong, where the case may be, and then they get punished just for that. I don't deal with heavy punishments. There has to be some understanding of why the punishment has happened, and then you have the punishment. Again, it's a fair medium between being strict in that disciplinary action versus just talking to the kid. In a lot of cases, you don't need to spank the kids. Some parents haven't spanked their kids, like my godson. Him and his sister, they haven't been spanked at all that I recall ever in their life. And they came out pretty good kids. Is he a weak kid? It depends on what you mean by weak kids. That's another thing. So I don't know. Let's keep going. Let's see what they say.
So I have 3 kids. I have a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And I used to be free range. I used to be like, just let these kids do what they want to do and have fun. And my mom used to whip me all the time, and I didn't like it, so I'm just going to be like this free range
not do
mom.
Anything.
So my son, he was doing good for a long time. He was hanging out with his friends, and then he's always wanted to be with his friends, never wanted to go home. I'm like trying to be just this chill mom, not really knowing what's going on over there. The next thing I know, my son is talking about, Mom, I got high today with my friends. I'm like, high? What do you mean you got high? It got so bad where he was like overdosing and always calling me to school like he's up here again, he's overdosed, he's in the hospital. And I'm like, dang, all I was trying to do is be this free range mom where he could just be free and do what he want to do, have fun, and be with his friends. And now everybody's telling me like, you failed your son. And now he's like with his father in Louisiana. And so I just feel like you can't be free range. You have to be like a balance. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna let these kids have so much fun and be happy. And I was just trying to be that cool mom, and it just backfired on me.
I think convoluting gentle and free range though isn't right, because just because they're free range doesn't mean I'm executing gentle parenting. Yeah. So in our household, we don't like the concept of gentle parenting, because this whole idea that you don't inflict punishment, you give alternatives and kind of redirect them with an alternative to something you said earlier, which is society doesn't give you alternatives. Society says this is what you do, and if you don't do it, this goes poorly for you. And so I think this ties to an earlier prompt, which is you punish your children, right? And that's not a non-free range statement to make, because I can still allow my child to have wider boundaries, but still be very clear about where those boundaries are and what the consequences are for those boundaries. And that may be spanking, that may be restriction, that may be being grounded, but just because I'm free range doesn't mean I believe in gentle parenting.
When you define what free range is, I think the strict parenting is probably better, in my opinion, termed as structured parenting, and we're probably a lot closer in terms of our outlook on parenting than I feel like I'm with gentle parenting. Now, when I
I like the way that the guy with the glasses is, I feel like they're more like they may have different viewpoints on certain things, but the way that they structure everything seems to be, the values at least seems to be the same, which is why it confused me why he was free range. I mean, I guess he has free range, but he's not necessarily strict, but then he's strict. I don't know. It's weird.
I say gentle parenting. I talk about this on social media. Everybody corrects me and tells me that's permissive parenting, and it gets into these semantics. And I'm like, well,
yeah, permissive.
That's kind of maybe the difference between socialism and communism. It's all kind of the same thing, in my opinion, at least what I observe, because I care more about what the outcome of something is than what people actually espouse and say what it is. And I think when you're talking about gentle parenting, just using that term to begin with, to what you were just saying, the world is not gentle. And at the end of the day, my role as a parent is to prepare my child for the world. Everything else is fun and a side quest or whatever else. But my fundamental role is to get this child ready to go into the world. And if they've had gentle parenting, I think you're teeing them up for going into the world really underprepared for what the world is going to look like and how it's going to treat them.
Well, and specific to the prompt says the child will be weak, right? And so why does gentle parenting make the child weak? The gentle parenting makes the child weak because the child believes at the end of it that they will get what they want. They will get something they want. And you try to pose it. I mean, what happens when the child says, no, I don't want that? Well, you try to come up with something else that the child's going to pick, and it elevates the child on top of this hill of what you want is the most important thing. And that makes a selfish, weak child that cannot handle when somebody looks at them and says, sorry, you can't have that.
Well, and they go into the workforce and their boss isn't going to be like, oh, how did you feel about not getting the job done? Why did you feel that way? Let's talk about an alternative way.
And then they just didn't want to.
No,
they didn't feel like it.
Okay, here's the consequence. You know, you're fired now, you're laid off, or whatever it looks like. So I think consequences and teaching kids at least varying degrees, and it gets more and more towards that point of entering into the real world, it needs to reflect that, build up to that. So you're sending them off prepared and ready to kick ass.
Let's bring in our disagreeers.
How do we define weak before we want to categorize it as weak? Because we could say that they failed or they didn't do well or however it looks like, but weak I think has such a different connotation to what I think gentle parenting leads kids to do as I see it in my classroom and on the playground with my other children.
What I came from was that stern parenting, and my wife came from free range. You know, and we battled as we were raising our kids back and forth. What I do know is that more structure as they were younger, we talked about the spanking and blah, blah, it worked. But that structure can turn against you. Me becoming more gentle as my kids started getting older and them able to come to me and talk to me about things definitely helped them in their lives. And they talk about that now because they could come home and talk to me about situations that was going on. You know, it wasn't just the situation of like, no, you do this, you go out, you drink, you go out, you have sex, you go out, you do this, I'm gonna come down on you with a hammer. We wanted them to understand it's your life. If you go out there and do this, I'm gonna be sad, but it's gonna be the consequences that you're gonna have to face. So I feel like it's a combination, like you guys were saying, it's a combination of the parenting. At certain points, you have to be that stern parent. You have to have that backbone. But I don't think being gentle with your kids and talking to them and listening to them will make them failures. I just don't. My daughters lost their virginity long after all their friends. Why? Because sex wasn't a taboo thing. Mm-hmm. Now, the way I was raised, you don't do it, you don't talk about it. I was raised in a Baptist church, you know? But being able to talk to my kids about sexuality and with their bodies, they were understood. It was not you hiding it from daddy. You know, that's you and that's your decision.
If gentle parenting solely means communicating with your kids, I'm a huge proponent of that. I absolutely believe in gentle parenting.
Yeah. See, the term gentle parenting, it's not solid, or at least the way that is being put out in the media, or at least the way that is being informed to everybody or a lot of people. It's not what it means. Okay. I'm not gonna look it up. I know that I did this somewhere. I can't remember where. I remember doing something very similar to this and actually looking this up. I feel like it may be on TikTok. Yeah. I think it's on TikTok. I'm gonna find it and I'm probably gonna put it up here somewhere, the video, at least, to go about the difference.
Communicating with your kids and having them be able to talk to you and talk through things with them without making them feel shamed. Mm-hmm. But if gentle parenting means we're going to avoid like consequences because we're going to talk about your feelings and we're going to really just try and circumvent any sort of negative feelings in this or any sort of consequences that might create a negative feeling, that's something I'm very much.
No, I agree.
I was just going to ask. I mean, so gentle parenting is a thing. I mean, that's a construct.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in this group that feels specifically like you know what that gentle parenting construct is?
What I think gentle parenting is the avoidance of consequences or avoidance of correcting behavior and then making excuses for your child on why they're acting that way, right? So, for example, I know this person that, you know, their child does act out quite a bit, and it's not just a one-time thing, it's like multiple people saying it, and then the mother is like, oh, you know, well, he's just very young and he doesn't understand. And this child's 5. I'm like, he's not really that young anymore, you know, he should be understanding at this point. So that's what I consider gentle parenting, is avoiding the consequences and then making excuses for your child's behavior.
So I still think that's framed very negatively, because I mean, there's a positive parenting concept, and primarily the parenting concept of gentle parenting is positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. That's the fundamental value.
Can you explain what that looks like?
My child is throwing a fit, okay, and I'm having trouble with them. Rather than threatening them or spanking them or, you know, saying you're going to bed when you get home, I sit there and say, you know, rather than using your energy to throw a fit, can I interest you in doing this thing?
Because that's PBIS for teachers. You're hitting your friends, you're stabbing, you're cursing, you know what? What is a better option?
Let's try something else.
That is not a better option. Rather than we have rules that we've discussed, and this is a natural consequence to you violating the contract and the agreement that we had.
Do you use that in your class?
We have to.
Yeah, you have to.
So that's why it's such a detriment to the classroom, because we are not providing consequences. We are not doing anything to really address what the issue is. It's if you do this thing that we know that is not appropriate, that we know it's violating a rule, a goal, an expectation that we've already discussed, right? Because we're supposed to do those said things. But permissive and being gentle, it's just like, you know, we understand children, they just need to feel, and they do need to feel. But I think we talked about that earlier, understanding that strict doesn't mean restrictive. No. It doesn't mean oppressive. Right. It just means we have guidelines, we have expectations, we have all these things that we do expect because it's understood. It's a natural consequence. It's not punitive.
The whole thing with gentle parenting is I think that I want my kids to think of me as gentle. I don't want them to be scared of me. I don't want them to think, oh my God, Mom, I'm gonna get in trouble by Mom. I'm gonna get in trouble. I want them, I'm gentle.
Which is crazy, because that's exactly what I want with my kids. If they do something wrong, they better know, oh, I'm about to get them. But that's just me. At the same time, my kids still love me at the end of the day. Regardless if they do something bad, they still run to me in happiness. And every time, if they do make me upset, I still let them know that I love them. It's just that they did something that I didn't like. They broke a rule. They did something that wasn't too great. Like, that's really all it is.
Everything else out in the world isn't, right? So, I mean, I that's the way I look at it. It's simple. I want to be the gentle person.
I want to jam on some kind of both of you guys were saying. I think I've been in business for 20 years. I'm an entrepreneur, and so I've realized that in business, over 20 years of doing this, that both carrots and sticks work, and you got to know how to apply both of them. It's not like I can just do carrots and get the behavior I need out of the people that work for me. So I think you need both. And I think when we say negative consequences, I actually don't think that's fair. I think the structure and the consequence is actually very constructive and positive, and we label it as negative. I feel like because I do give my kids structure, and because they understand that Dad is going to follow through on what he says, it actually builds trust with us. And I feel like I have a lot of communication with my kids. I don't feel like they hide stuff from me. I feel like the fact that I give them structure actually builds a lot more trust. And when I observe parents that don't give structure to their kids and have consequences for actions, I feel like there's a lack of trust and a lack of respect between the parents and the kids.
And I feel like that trust makes us a safe place to come home to.
One thing between free range, maybe there's a disagreement here. Free range and what I would say more structured parenting rather than strict parenting is that it's like you're preparing your kids for the game of life. And if that's basketball, if I tell my kids, just go out and figure out how to play basketball.
They're not
do it, and you're gonna come back and I'm gonna celebrate you. They're not gonna be ready for life. Now, if I get them into training programs, if I get them structured, if I'm teaching them fundamentals, if I'm in the weeds with them, giving them consequences of structure, now when they get ready for basketball, they're light years ahead. So I do think there's a difference. I would use the word weak. I think 10 years of structured training is going to make them way stronger than 10 years of non-structured training is going to make them weaker.
I would agree with you. The only thing I would disagree is that, like, for instance, I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. All 3 of my children are. And I think all 3 of them are entrepreneurs and have their own companies because of that gentle parenting I have with them, talking about their feelings and helping them navigate life. But the structure behind it is what makes them be on their game.
I think we're the same person.
Yeah, we're still talking about the same things. That's a crazy thing. That's why I'm so confused. Like, there really is, like, I don't know. I don't think you're really gonna have somebody that's so far off on one side versus the other that's gonna come, or that really has the balls to come on here. But I just feel like there's like we think that there's differences, but there really isn't that much different at the end of the day. Where is his hairline? Sorry.
Adam, a question I have for you, just to kind of wrap this up. There's maybe a little bit more like toughness, or there's consequences. You're talking about the importance of consequences that can be seen as tough. Do you ever worry that that toughness could lead to your kids concealing things from you?
Yeah, I think if I just came home and was just the disciplinarian, then for sure. But I love my kids. I spend as much time as I can with them, and anytime there is a consequence, they understand it, and they're not even resentful about it. They may not want it, but they're like, we get it, Dad. I understand. This is what happened. I screwed up. So we have those types of conversations, and they're very open with me. I mean, we talk about everything. There's nothing that's taboo. There's nothing like, we don't talk about that, or just because I said so. If there's a rule, I'm going to go through why and how important it is for them. Not for me. It's not to make my life more convenient. It's not to make it easier for me to be a parent. It's because this is what the world looks like, and there has to be consequences for this type of behavior. And I don't want to do this. I hate being that guy, but I love you enough to do it.
I am okay with my child rejecting the religious beliefs that I instilled in them.
If they I think I will say that, especially with Christianity, I think it really just depends on what they believe as truth. And I think a lot of people in this earth are misguided. If they were properly guided in Christianity and what Christianity really means, what it really means to follow Jesus, what it really means to be a part of the true big church, nobody would really stray away from it. And realizing that a lot of stuff that's out in the world is very worldly, I don't think they would really stray from it. Having that fill within them that should be the Holy Spirit and the relationship that you have with God, that leaves room for things of the world to try to take real estate within your soul. And that's not, and I want to say that in that case, well, religious belief, again, Christianity is not really religious. It's a relationship. It's a relationship with the one true creator, because the same way how Adam and Eve had a relationship with God, we have that connection through the Holy Spirit with God. Is because of Adam and Eve had chose to listen and fall into sin, and thus being exposed to all the things that our mind makes us believe that we don't need God, that we can venture out and do whatever it is that we need to do. That's the world that really tries to infiltrate within us and take the place of God and tell us that we don't need God. God doesn't exist. And a lot of people, they just don't really mesh with the idea of Christianity. But I feel like it's because they weren't taught it properly. And I feel like a lot of people that do stray away from it end up finding their way back, because God is a promising God, and if he needs you for something, he'll use you.
Will the agreeer step forward?
Now, if we're talking about child rejecting religious beliefs, it's different when, I think, depending how society is and how much of society that they're around and how little that we are around them with the church. I don't know. I've seen various scenes and thought processes of people that's fallen from the church and stuff. I think at the end of the day, if I've done what I've needed to, I set the discipline, I made sure that I was available and with them in their life, and that I showed them the word and how to read it and how to follow it. And I surround them with the same like-minded people and really expose to them the differences between living of the world and living in the spirit. I think that will guide them, I know that will guide them to the direction that they need to. Even if there's a time period, everybody goes through their phases. A lot of people go through their phases where they may not have that relationship anymore, or the relationship lessens, or they may reject it. And there have been plenty of times where even after rejecting it, as time progressed, they go back to it because they realize that was the relationship that they needed all along, the relationship that all of us need all along, and they stick with it and they use that testimony. I know plenty of people that grew up in the church like I did, left the church, but now came back seeing that whatever it is out in the world is not what we need. We need to maintain our relationship with the Father above. So again, there can be phases. There can be a point where my child rejects. At that point, I'll just pray that they come back, that they find that relationship, and that they come back to the faith.
I, for one, am not very religious. I was baptized Catholic when I was really, really young, but I grew up going to Christian churches. So I do have, faith, but I don't necessarily agree with one religion or another. Now, with my daughter, when I had her, my family was a little upset that I didn't choose to baptize her. And my thing was, I want her to find religion on her own. I want her to find beliefs, whether it's God specifically, whether it's a higher power, whatever she decides, because I think ultimately what I want her to be is a good person, right? And I do think that every religion has good things and different things. I don't think one religion has it right. So if she comes to me one day and said, Mom, I'm an atheist, I would, I honestly would kind of approach it with curiosity and tell me why, tell me what's going on. As long as your atheism comes with the foundation of being a good person, I don't see the problem in that.
I have raised my children with a faith, with believing that Jesus is the Son of God, and that is what I have offered them. I have taken them to church. They've watched VeggieTales. They know the Bible. And it is now up to them to go out and decide for themselves. And if they don't decide, my job as a mother is to be a safe place for them to land, to pray for them and to love them, and to just hope that that's where they come back to. But I would not be angry with them, and I would not reject them.
Right. My situation, I am in a biracial religion house. My wife is Jewish, so I'm Baptist. I was raised Baptist. So as we were raising our kids, we raised them with both of our religions and both of the historics, and this is the beliefs and the holidays. So we did Passover, we did Easter, we did all of them. I consider myself spiritual now, and I don't consider myself Baptist, and I really would want my kids to discover it on their own. Yes, would I be heartbroken if they came to me and said that they were atheists? To me, I just feel that's a lonely way to exist. If you want to, that's fine, but that would hurt me more so than them choosing something to believe in.
So I was raised very religious, and it served me well in a lot of ways, and I've raised my kids in the same religion that I was brought up in. But the older that I've gotten, the more it's apparent to me that religion is basically middle management. It's man-made. And so it can be a tool that's effective for helping us draw closer together. It also could be a tool closer to God. It can also be a tool that keeps us further away from God and gets us focused on things that isn't from God. So I have a problem with religion, even though I consider myself actively religious. And
what's your faith?
Christian,
Got it.
Specifically Mormon.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow, I would have thought the other guy was Mormon.
And so I have a problem with any time we put somebody between us and God as the spokesperson for God. And I think that's the nature of religion, is to say, hey, we know what you're supposed to do, we know what rules you're supposed to follow. We're going to dumb down these very complex things into simple Sunday school answers, memorize those, do what you're told. Oh, and by the way, pay us money while you're at it. And there's something in that that's just really dishonest to me, and it rubs me the wrong way.
Right.
However, at the same time, there's so much value in religion too, so it's a mixed bag, and I find that having that kind of framework, speaking of parenting and stuff, religion can be that, especially for kids, where you can teach them collectively, this is what we center around, or these types of values. And so ultimately though, if my child came and said, hey, I feel this way about your religion and I'm more interested in this religion, I'd actually be interested with them.
So I'm Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic. I left my faith in high school. And didn't come back to it for a few years after I graduated high school. And now that I've come back, we are raising our kids Catholic. So I'm very confident in our belief system, and that I believe that it is the truth. That being said, I also, because of my own experience, very much believe that faith is a journey. not a destination.
Right.
So you don't land in some church and are magically, oh wow, this is amazing. It's a conversion experience. And so, that conversion experience I had to go through, and it started as a child. I mean, it started by shedding off what my parents were pushing on me. And then ultimately, I came back to it as my own. And so when I think about children, right, children will eventually have to be out in the world doing their thing, and they have to be able to make their own decisions.
Let's bring in our disagreeer.
So the interesting thing. Oh, let's see what she got to say.
Okay, so I raised my kids in the church. When I was married, I was in the church. When I was divorced, I was in the church. Went to church every Sunday for years. I would drive like an hour away to go to church every Sunday.
Sheesh.
When I finally realized my son was out of control, and I was like, Lord, what did I do wrong? And I'm praying and I'm talking to God. I'm like, what did I do wrong with my son? He said, you stopped going to church. That's exactly what he told me. So I said, yeah, I did stop going to church. And so with that being said, my kids, they cannot change religion. They cannot stray away from God because they've already seen it happen. In my family, I already seen how far my son was out in the world once I stopped going to church and tried to be this cool mom. So for me, I want my kids to stay grounded in religion. I even tell my son to pray, read your Bible, because that's the only thing that's going to keep you in this world.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about that, right, is that we're talking about parenting, right? Our parents model their behavior after us. So the story is not just about whether you were telling them they had to be Christian or not. It was, for me, a story about how are you exhibiting to them the life that you believe would make them healthy, which involves going to church, right? So, I think that's perhaps where there's a little bit of a give and take there. If I'm showing them a lifestyle that's not showing them the beliefs, right? I'm not actually expecting it of them. Whereas if they can see by my lifestyle, that's something they're going to model after, and they're going to do that.
Yes. That's interesting because my pastor, he actually talked about that a couple of Sundays ago. If you're not modeling what it means to be Christian, what makes you think that your kids are going to follow what you do? Very nice.
I agree with that. I feel like, I did the Saturday church school, the Wednesday church school, every Sunday in church, and that it didn't do as much for me as one of the things we did with my kids growing up to have that time as a family is we had dinner together every night. And we sat there, there's no phones, we talked. That molded my kids into being good people more so than taking them to a building, I feel, or telling them that they had to read a Bible. It's sitting there having that conversation with them about what are you doing in your life? How are you being a good person? What happened to you in school today? How did you handle that?
Interesting. So, and this is something that I'm learning when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to Christianity, everything is your relationship with God and understanding that Jesus is the one that gives us our salvation into heaven, which means that Jesus is the way and the light. The only way to heaven is through him. The only way. So the idea that, if you want to go and do this religion and do that religion, then it's okay. Not necessarily. Not at all, honestly. Which is weird because of the Mormon guy. And the thing is that the woman with the button up, she said it right. Or she said it in a way that makes me believe that she believes in her faith because she understands that Jesus is the only way to heaven. So I'm teaching my kids the only way to go to heaven. If there was another option, I will allow them to go with another option, but there is no other option. Like I was saying before, if they stray away from Christianity and then later come back, then that's all part of their walk. But there isn't no, if you want to go and do another religion, then that's fine. That's not okay, because all the other religions doesn't point to what's going to happen at the end of your life, unless they're talking about the whole reincarnation thing. But even then, there's no relationship between the higher being and, I guess, Muhammad or whatever. So it's kind of, there's a big gap, an unreachable gap. So you kind of just have to think like with the Greek gods and the, what do you call those? the Nordic gods and stuff like that. They're just out there. There was really no relationship. We just assumed that it was there. With Jesus, there's a relationship. Jesus was here. Jesus walked. Jesus had the relationship. Jesus died and Jesus rose. I don't see anybody else that rose from the dead. So with that being said, everybody's perspective, I get everybody's perspective, but at the same time, that again, that mindset of religion, of just being an institution where you have specific guidelines, specific structures and stuff like that. Christianity and having a relationship with Jesus is way more than that. So you don't consider your relationship with your family as a religion. You wouldn't consider it. That's your parent. So you talk with them, you learn from them and stuff like that. If you don't talk to them, you're not going to know stuff from them. And then they can't assist you how you need them to, or guide you in the way that you need to be guided. It's the same thing like your relationship with God. And it's explicitly said that in the Bible. So, that's kind of where we go off of that. So yeah, the whole religious thing, I don't like the idea of religion, but the faith will always stay strong if you teach in a way that allows them to learn, to understand, and to grow within the faith, but understanding that the Bible is the key to getting all your answers, and that along the way, the Spirit will tell you what you need to do and what you need to learn, as long as you're there and willing to listen. And don't allow the things of this world, don't allow the things of the flesh to overcome your mind. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's get to this last point. I have regrets as a parent. Regrets? Do I have regrets? I say regrets in a way of there's some things that I probably wish I would have done differently, but I don't think it's so much regrets. It's probably just evaluating certain events, certain things that happened, as opposed to regret. Oh, like I really wish I didn't do that. I don't think I have much regrets. But even then, my whole parenting career has started for the past 4 or 5 years, really. So. Yeah, I don't think I have regrets.
I have regrets as a parent.
I have a lot of regrets as a parent, mostly because of the way that I was parented and then the way I approached parenting with what I had been given. I think I tried to do the best I could with what I understood at the time, but I just didn't have the tools that I needed to parent my children with the consideration of what I know now. I think partnering with somebody is something that is so important, but nobody really emphasized how important it is who you have children with, who you build relationship, who you build with a community with.
Yeah.
That has a strong and heavy impact on how you parent your children, how they understand parenting.
That's the first part of it.
But my regret is that I pushed my kids too hard to be successful. I was one of those parents, and they're very successful now, but I feel like I could have backed up a little bit and not pushed so hard. So I really regret just being that parent of seeing the potential in your child and then pushing.
I'll be curious to see what they say about not having regrets, because I feel like just as a human, there's like, oh man, I really shouldn't have had that second cup of coffee today. Like that's just kind of how I live. I don't live in this constant.
In that case, I don't really use, I guess that's what regret is. To me, regret kind of has a deeper connotation to it. Regret is like, I don't know. It's just something about regret that's like, to me, in the same category as hate, but not meaning like, oh, I hate this, I hate that with regret. But like, to me, hate is not in my dictionary. I don't hate anybody. There's very few things that I hate. There may be some actions that I dislike with a passion, but I just get over it. But as far as like hate, there's not much things that I really hate that I can really think of. So with regrets, I can't think of something in my life that I could probably think of some things in my life that I regret. But again, my parenting career just happened in the past 5 years, 6 years, 5 years. And regret, like there hasn't been much things that happened for me to regret just yet. So that could be, I just haven't done anything for me to regret, but I've also evaluate my situation and my parenting on a daily basis. So I don't know. I may not get to that point where I regret something, just because I've learned so much over the years. And I took into consideration the way that I was raised, the way that other people were raised, and tried to formulate, best practices when it comes to being a parent. So regret, yeah, I don't know. But we'll see what she says. Again, at some point, there may be something that I may regret, but we'll see.
state of regret, but I do live it. I'm like, oh man, I was too hard on my kids that day, or I wish I could have said this softer, or I wish I would have pushed a little harder.
I don't think that's regret, though. I don't think that's regret. I think that's just evaluation. But again, to me, like, regret is such a deep term. I can't really think of a situation where I could be like, yeah, I regret that. Like, to where I think the idea is regret to where when I think about the action that was done, it puts me in a depressing mood. Like, I really shouldn't have done that type thing. And it like bothers me, and it takes up my brain space to a heavy extent, to a heavy amount of time. Then I think that's when regret can be used. But I don't know. I don't harp on a lot of things to really be able to regret. I more so evaluate. So let's just see. Let me stop talking and see what they say.
But for me, I got married really young, had my kids really young, and
Okay, so that may be one thing. I regret having kids young. I can understand that because you're in your life. Okay, I can see that. Yeah, so it's really just the emotion, because some people could get married young and then they decide, yeah, that's the best thing. But then other people, like throughout their relationship, and be like, oh my gosh, I should have never done this. Or I regret buying the car because it's bringing you such grief. It brings you such grief when you think about it. Yes, so there's nothing that I've decided to do during my parenting career that I regret it. That it brought me enough grief to really use the term regret. Again, it might be different for other people. That to me, that's what regret would mean. It had to really bring me grief every time I think about the situation in order for me to say, yeah, I regret that.
Parented a lot of out of emotion. Like I was emotionally unhealthy. And so learning that, I wish I would have gotten in counseling earlier than I did. And I wish that I could have parented through that a little bit more rather than learn it as I grow.
What I regret is my son always say, Mom, you too hard, you too tough, you don't ever cry, you fake. I'm like, what?
Yikes.
But I wish I would have cried more, because I did cry behind closed doors. But they never saw that side, and my son said he wished he would have seen that side, because it would have made him probably like a better person or a better kid. But
all right, we're gonna bring in our perfect parents.
No regrets. Show us the tattoos.
No regrets. Show us the tattoos.
I want to say maybe I've done things that weren't ideal. I mean, gosh, my kids have seen me go through like different mental health issues and just things like that. I mean,
they were gonna say different
it's not perfect. No one's perfect, but regret. They got to see that you have feelings, that you're, you get upset. It gave you the opportunity to have that discussion with them.
This goes into what am I trying to prepare my child for, right? They're going into a world full of imperfect people. Yeah. That world includes me and their mom. And we are going to do things imperfect. I don't regret being an imperfect person. If I regret being an imperfect person, I'm going to be miserable for my entire life.
All right, so I have to end it there. As a fairly new parent, I have a 3-year-old daughter. This has been very, very interesting. I've written down some mental notes. But I gotta say, I just have like tremendous respect to anybody who is, 8 kids is crazy. But a tremendous amount of respect to all of you, who have raised kids and who are parents. And so thank you guys for being a part of this discussion.
Well, good luck on your journey.
I need it.
Don't make any mistakes.
Yo, that was nuts. I loved it. It was great. And I just was glad that this topic came up, because all the other topics, a lot of them was like politics and stuff. But I think the thing that makes this very interesting to me is that ever since doing, this whole foster care thing, I've been in contact, or I've witnessed parenting on so many levels. That is crazy. And with the situation that we're dealing right now, there's a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to parenting. There's a lot of factors that come into play when we think about why some people parent the way that they do. They parent too much, or the lack thereof. There's no real one way to, I lied. There's a way to, there's no real blueprint steps to raise your kids. It's really how you want to, as long as there's a basis. But of course you guys know that I'm going to say that the basis is always to allow them to teach them to walk in the way of being a Christian and loving Jesus and loving God, and to follow the guidelines that's provided by the Bible. Honestly, I feel like that's a great first start for any relationship with kids. And as far as being a parent goes, I think what allowed me to be the parent that I am is that I always evaluated everything that went on in my life. And every time when I'm caught in a situation with my kids, I sit and I think about the situation before I act. Majority of the time, at least. And again, I'm only 33 years old, and I have an 18-year-old in the house, a 4-year-old, and almost 2-year-old. So I think I'm fairly young for the children that are within my household. And because of that, it wasn't that long ago that I was a child myself. Honestly, I still feel like a child in a lot of cases. I still remember the things that I did as a child. So when they do things, I empathize with it, and I try and I go off of that empathy, try to be there for their emotions and their feelings and whatever is going on at that moment. But then at the end of the day, understand what is it that needs to be learned, what is it that we can do to change, to progress, and just along those lines, because we can't just sit here and soak in our emotions. We got to be able to progress and learn from them so that we can become better each and every day. But that's just me and how I've been as a parent. Of course, there's still plenty of things that I can learn, and like the Catholic guy said, I'm imperfect, and I understood that. I come from an imperfect father. I come from a very imperfect grandfather, and so as much praise as everybody gives me, I never let that get to my head, because I will always make mistakes, but I try my damnedest to not make those mistakes, while understanding that I'm gonna make mistakes. So interestingly enough, that was a great video. Please, Jubilee, please do not give me a copyright strike on these videos. I'm begging you. That was a fun time, y'all. As always, go ahead and comment what you want. Go ahead and like the video if you like the video. Hit that bell for any other more videos. If you guys, I'm gonna do more Jubilee videos if I don't get striked for it, because this is in essence what I want. I want to hear both sides of situations and really understand people. Good stuff nonetheless. If you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Take it easy, peace.